So yesterday I received amazing news from Williamson County, Tennessee that puts me a tiny baby step further along with my plans for the property that I bought from Danny. And if you've been following along, you know that I bought 40 acres of beautiful farmland from a very dear friend, Danny, who passed in July. And so what I'm trying to do is keep that as a working farm, learn how to farm. I have some background growing up in a farming family, but you know, a lot of this is brand new to me. And the property is improved with a stock barn that was built in the 1940s, and over time, you know, the roof's in disrepair and it needs to come down. So the plan is save what wood I can and construct a new barn. And the way it works here, you know, Williamson County is a very, very popular county. A lot of people want to live here. They take a long time to get anything passed through. It's very, very expensive for permits and all that stuff. So for better or worse, that's where the land is. Now there's two tracks with any type of construction, right? There's the actual physical tract of building, demoing, building, you know, putting hammer, nails, all of that good stuff. And then there's the paper track. Now, again, for better or worse, I'm a lawyer, and so I'm pretty conversant in all of the paperwork. So the big thing right now is getting approved for septic, because I cannot apply for my building permit until I get my septic approval letter. So back in September, my surveyor, Roger Hara, who's excellent, he submitted my septic application for 2 septic sites on the property, one for a future home and one for a barn. And the county, it took them 5 months to just open the application, which is really ridiculous. And what had to accompany this application is what is called a letter of intent. So in my letter of intent, I had to explain the structures, I had to explain what the plumbing was for. I said, you know, I have quarter horses, I want to have plumbing in the tack room, I want to have a restroom for farm labor, I want to have a sink in a summer kitchen for processing animals, and so forth. So initially when the county opened up my file, they came back and they said, processing animals, this sounds commercial. This sounds like a commercial structure, and therefore you have to go to planning. Now that's a big problem, because planning, it's more expensive. It's a much more rigorous application process. It's more time intensive, expensive, all of that stuff. So that was a little bit of a blow when I got that back. And I remember hearing before that if you are anything having to do with farm in Tennessee, you have a lot of leeway as opposed to if you were truly, you know, commercial retail. So I linked up with Farm Bureau, who's been excellent. They do a lot of lobbying on behalf of farmers. They pointed me in the direction of certain case law. I read over case law, I read the Tennessee Code, I read Attorney General opinions. And basically the way it works in Tennessee is this. If you have anything to do with farming, and this is the state law, it's in the Tennessee Annotated Code. If you have anything to do with farming, and farming is really broadly defined, the counties cannot create more stringent regulations for you. So Williamson County cannot override what the state permits, right? Tennessee historically is an agricultural state. And so I spent some time reading that. I redid my letter of intent, and I was very clear. I explained, look, this is agriculture, this is not commercial. I mean, you can be an ag business, right? You can derive money from agriculture, and that is commercial, but it's agricultural commercial. It's not like owning a laundromat or something like that. So I redid my letter of intent. I explained, look, this is a farm. It's a farm. I have my sales tax exemption. I'm green belt. I have a greenhouse on order from the Mennonites. I've got 2 horses. I've got all of this stuff going on. This is farm. And I also cited the Tennessee Code. I said I didn't get really aggressive with it, but I put, you know, pursuant to Tennessee law, et cetera, et cetera. So yesterday I got the good news from my surveyor that they agreed. And so now I'm classified as agriculture. That's a huge win because I don't have to go to planning. There's still a lot of work to do. I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm going to share with you my computer screen. I'm going to show you, I did a walking tour you might have seen of the farm so far in a prior YouTube, but I'm going to show you an aerial view and what the plan is going forward for the farm. So stay tuned.
So here's an aerial view of the property. I'm not sure when this image was taken. It was quite a while ago because, you know, my orchard's not there. But here you can see this right here is the property line, more or less. Goes like this. Now there's Danny's house and garage, and this is all owned by his nephew Jeff. He owns 60 acres here, I own 40 acres here. Here is the stock barn that's going to be coming down. Here is a pole barn that was built by Danny's family. Here's the other pole barn that you saw on my walking tour. Now this is where the horses are now. See how this is, I was very lucky because it's fenced in on 3 sides. I ran the fence here and the horses are hanging out here. They used to be in this area. This is where the orchard currently is. This is where the family's garden is. This is where the garden will be. So initially I thought, okay, this is where the old barn was. This is where the new barn should be. And I had contractors come out to give me an estimate, and they said, why the heck are you going to put the barn there? It sits at such a low elevation, you're going to pay a fortune in fill to get it up to a level that makes sense. And they were right. So now, once this barn is demoed, this pole barn is going to get moved down to this area. This is where I store my tractor and equipment. The new barn is actually going to go up here. This, I'm not sure what I'll do with. Someday I'll probably move it into a backfield, but for now it's providing the housing for the horses, and so it needs to remain. There's cows on the property, and I have a fencing company working hard to put a fence in between mine and Jeff so that the cows can go on Jeff's side and they won't fool with the construction. So once the fence is complete, the barn gets demoed. This gets demoed, this gets moved. I have a greenhouse on order, an 84 by 30 foot greenhouse coming in from the Mennonites, and that's gonna go down here too. So a lot's gonna happen in the next 3 weeks. Now this, if you've never seen, this is CAD, this is from my surveyor, and this is, I'm just showing you what septic looks like here. So in Tennessee, you had to have your surveyor and a soil person come out. They had to take soil samples at each field had 30 different stakes. So 30 and 30 was 60. That was a big project to hammer in rebar at all of the wooden stakes. But what they did was they took different soil samples and to see how well water did or did not filtrate through the land. So then what they do is they develop what is a soils map, which is what you see here. This is for a future home septic. Future home maybe is here someday. This is for the barn, right? That's what I was talking about earlier, the barn septic. And so I'm still waiting to hear what kind of septic system the county thinks I'll need. Fingers crossed that it's conventional, because that's gonna save me a lot of money. So, the new barn will go up in this area, and here's the septic field for it. So, and then here you can also see the property line between me and Jeff. That's where the fence is going to keep all the dang cows over here. And when the builders pointed out to me, hey, why are you gonna put the new barn where the old barn is? And I thought, shoot, what else am I overlooking? And I got in touch through my network with this guy named Doug Sharp, who, if you're familiar with Franklin, Tennessee, he helped design West Haven, the landscape architect and planner by trade. And I got in touch with him and I said, I have this property, I have these structures, how the heck should I lay it out? So this is one of the plans we worked on together, where a future home site could be the future, where the barn should go, how driveways should work. Because right now I share one with Jeff. I'm not sure if that will always make sense if he doesn't own the property anymore. So here's a really cool idea of driveways and topography and landscaping. So Doug, his name is Doug Sharp, and he's just been phenomenal to have on my team. And this is the area that I'm most concerned with right now. This is where the greenhouse is going to be. This is where the stock barn is going to move. And at my current home, I have a 20 by 40 foot greenhouse that will eventually get moved over here. So for me, who has no training in here, I thought, okay, well, you know what? Let's just clump all of the work structures together to preserve as much land as we can to grow. Just squeeze them all in. They're not attractive. These greenhouses that I'm doing, they're not attractive. The pole barn's not attractive. We'll just kind of squeeze it all in the corner. And Doug said, let's not do that. He said, let's do this thing called placemaking. And he's right. So here you can see the pole barn, right? Here you can see the greenhouse. Here's the 20 by 40 foot greenhouse. This is the big one, the 30 by 84. And this is the little garden shed that's over there. And he said, why don't you orient them so you can kind of create different places, different experiences, different gardens, different pathways. And he was just so on point. I'm so glad that I have him on my team. And so this layout is basically going to get dropped in here. Now, as I shared with you, when I had to go and redo my letter of intent to Williamson County, here's a case I wrote about. This is in Wilson County, Tennessee, where these poor ladies, these two ladies up in Wilson County, which is east of Nashville, they had 8 acres and they had a horse business, and the county came in and said, hey, yeah, you're in violation of zoning. You cannot have your horse farm here. And so they basically had to sue the county. And the state said, and it got appealed. The county sided with the county, and then they had to appeal to this on the state level. And the state said, you know what? You're wrong. Like, these women can do it. Equine, on its face, is agriculture pursuant to Tennessee code, right? So here's my letter of intent. This is the revised one. This is what this looks like. So I had to explain the home site and then the barn, and I had to explain in detail, okay, this is the size of the barn, I'm a farm, I have a greenhouse on order, I have my Tennessee Department of Sales Tax exemption authorization, I'm in Greenbelt. And so in here, I just very politely cited agriculture in Tennessee means these things, and this is what I'll be doing. And then they reevaluated and they said, oh yeah, okay, you are a farm. So that was a major win.
Now, as to plans for the property, specific plans, who knows what's really going to happen. But I think people can easily put me in the homestead category, which is fine. I have a lot of respect and admiration for folks who want a homestead. I think autonomy is really important, to be able to be self-sufficient, certainly admirable. I like electricity. I like the internet. I'm not trying to live off the grid or anything like that. I'm a really curious person. I love plants. I get so much joy from being in the dirt, and I'm a huge nerd. I love to read. And when I was growing up, I was really lucky. I got to play in the creeks with my cousins and my siblings, and I kind of look at life almost like if you ever got to play in a creek and you would turn over those rocks and hope to find a salamander, hope to find a crayfish, like, what are you going to discover? And so I've spent the last, 6 months or so really going down this rabbit hole of historical botany, historical horticultural practices, landscape. Where did our techniques come from? Who are the forefathers of this? And so I've been reading a lot about too, the French techniques. French horticulture, very different than English. We borrowed a lot from the French. William Bertram is one of the forefathers of American botany. He came over in the late 1700s. He toured the Southeast, kind of like a Lewis and Clark type thing. He documented a lot of his discoveries, so I've been reading a lot about that. Thomas Jefferson with Monticello. I have plants coming in from Monticello. George Washington and Mount Vernon. Read a lot about George Washington Carver, and I wish I could go back in time and have a coffee with this man. He's an African American, grew up in poverty, but was just a genius, just a botanical genius. And he really devoted his life to learning, to encouraging poor people, primarily Black people in the South, about how to grow nutritious food. Sweet potato, peanuts, tomatoes, how to grow nutritious food, and how to really preserve the soil so that the soil remained healthy. And for a long time, I always thought that this sort of dovetailed with the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, but it was actually before that. So there's companies out there, believe it or not, who have republished these bulletins that came out from George Washington Carver. So I've been able to get my hands on them and read like what bulletins have gone out to farmers during that time. Liberty Hyde Bailey, I've been reading a lot of his work. He actually was very influential at Cornell. That's where I went to undergrad. There's Bailey Hall up there. He was a fruit guy, an apple guy. He did a lot for ag extension and for 4-H. So I've been learning about him. Andrew Jackson Downing, he's another man who, sadly, he died very young, but he was from Albany, Newburgh, New York, and he was a nurseryman, and this was around like the early 1800s, and he came up with a publication that came out monthly and was distributed to people interested in farming and nurseries and horticulture, and I've been able to get my hands on some of those publications, and there's old like advertisements and there's old varieties referenced, and it's so interesting. He was good friends with Olmsted, the person who designed Central Park. So all of that to say, I'm hopeful to use the farm as a way to sort of preserve some of these techniques, some of this history. I've got really old roses on order that will come in March from a farm I found in Denver. These are varieties that predate the mid-1800s. So, certainly ag innovation is important. New varieties and plant breeding is so important, but I want to really try to preserve some of history with the techniques and the varieties out there and kind of implement based on these newsletters that I've been reading about what people did a long time ago.
Okay, so this is just a mini stack of my books. You talk about being a nerd. Here's William Bartram, Thomas Jefferson, The Horticulturalist and Journal of Rural Art and Taste. That's the Andrew Jackson Downing. There's a Liberty Hyde Bailey, Vintage Roses. Here's one of the bulletins. Nature's Garden for Victory and Peace, George Washington Carver. So this is like what he sent out, how to have a nice garden when you're poor, basically. Here's another one that he did. How to Grow the Tomato. Here's another bulletin. The Cultivations of Orchards in 1894 by Liberty Hyde Bailey. So it's just so incredible that these resources are still available. And this is what I'm hopeful to do on the farm, is kind of, really bring life back to some of these concepts and some of these genius minds.